All right, guys, thanks for joining Diesel Performance Podcast. We got a special edition here. I'm sitting down with Chris Otani, one of the engineers over at Banks Power, and he's going through some really cool results that they're getting off of the gear that they've set up with all of the competitors this year. So give me a little bit of an idea here. What are you guys measuring, and what are you measuring it with?
All right, so we gave each of the contestants here a Banks I-1.8 data monster system, which is a little OBD2 gauge plugs into the port, as well as a series of sensor modules to be able to log pressures and temperatures at different key locations in the intake to ultimately measure manifold air density, which is the ultimate power metric to look at for an engine.
Okay, so manifold air density compared to boost. This is something, again, we've talked about with Gale in the past. We know he's really big on mad versus bad and what this is telling us. Give my listeners a quick recap here. Why do we care about manifold air density?
All right, so your engine is essentially at its core, it's an air pump. So it's moving a certain amount of volume per revolution. So with that volume, with that CFM that is pumping, the more dense the air is, the more mass it has per 1,000 cubic feet of volume, the more oxygen you're putting into the cylinders. And with that extra oxygen, you're able to input more fuel and get more power out of it. So unlike just measuring boost pressure, which is only the pressure aspect of it, it doesn't account for any of the temperature effects that's going on and accounting for that density. So manifold air density combines the two and is basically the ultimate way of looking at how much oxygen you're feeding your engine and ultimately how much power your engine is able to produce. Okay.
So boost just gives me a general idea of the pressure or just the volume that I'm throwing into the manifold. And we all understand, I think, in the diesel world at this point, the more air, the better, right? If I can get more boost, if I can get more air into my engine, like you said, I could throw more fuel at it. I can burn more fuel, or I can burn the fuel I have more efficiently. How much swing does temperature make on this? Like if I see 60 pounds of boost and it's 100 degrees outside or it's 40 degrees outside, how much actual change is that in air density?
It's huge, actually. So right now we're looking at a data set from one of the logs earlier today on the quarter-mile pass. So the biggest thing where you can see the example of how big temperature affects everything is, so before your intercooler basically is a restriction in the device. It removes boost pressure. For most of these contestants we're looking here today, they're about 3 or 4 PSI pressure loss through the intercooler. So if boost is the best metric, why would anyone put an intercooler in their system that's going to restrict everything? And the answer is because the loss of boost pressure has a net density effect that's less than the benefit from the loss of temperatures. And in most of the cases here, it actually doubles the density before and after the intercooler. So it's huge. It's actually one of the biggest contributions to power of the engine, more so than just the turbos themselves.
Okay, so now I'm getting it. So I'll give up a couple of PSI if I can get more dense air, meaning I'm going to be able to burn everything better down the line. How does that make an impact over guys with twin turbo kits compared to single turbo kits? Because I'll tell you, we love Brad Sankey, but that single S480 and Billy Hartzell with his single turbo, they both had struggles throughout the competition.
Yeah, so the compounds are definitely putting a lot more temperature into the charge air than the single turbos, but they're also putting a lot more pressure as well. So by looking at the manifold air density or the compressor outlet densities, we can kind of see what's the net effect of a lower boost, lower temperature system versus a higher boost, higher temperature system. And overall, the compound turbos are getting a net benefit of they have higher temperatures, but the extra pressure gives them more density than the single compounds in a general sense.
They're offsetting it like a 12 valve with a screwdriver. They just keep turning it up.
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
it. I like it. Okay. But they have performed better, so they're working out here. As we look across the board, are the guys who are making the highest boost also making the most horsepower? Are there any other surprising kind of results that we're seeing as we're going through some of these measurements?
Well, we're seeing some of the contestants have pretty restrictive intercoolers, so that's kind of playing into some of the final power numbers. But it ultimately also depends on how much fuel and how much how far they're willing to take the limits of their engine. So some of these guys are pushing it to the ragged edge. We've seen a couple guys blow up already, and some guys are running a little bit more conservative. So, it's kind of hit or miss there.
Gotcha. How does nitrous play into this mix? Because we're seeing a lot of guys, they started off real conservative with the nitrous, even especially yesterday at the dyno. And then as they got into their later runs, it was a spray and pray effect where they're just give it everything we got. We need a number. Are you seeing that make a huge difference in the temperatures when they run the fuel only compared to when they run with the nitrous?
Oh yeah, definitely. The nitrous is doing a lot to cool that charger and increase the air density. So it's a huge impact on the overall air density and the overall oxygen content in the engine. So especially the guys that are spraying it in between their two compressor stages, since no one here is running a true intercooler, so a charger cooler in between compressor 1 and compressor 2, they're seeing some guys with no nitrous in between stages. They're having charger cooler temps as high as 700 or 800 degrees F. But the guys that are running the nitrous are actually down in like the 5s or the 4s. So it's doing a lot to cool off that charger in between stages.
Absolutely. Okay, so it's not even just how much nitrous, where did you place it? Where are the jets running? How are you using the nitrous? And we all know timing and everything else has something to do with that. That's really interesting, man. What other kind of insights are you guys gathering as you look through some of this data?
So for this exercise or this event, what we're doing is we're having a contest to see who's got the best compressor, who's got the best intercooler, and who's got the best overall engine package, all by measuring air density. And we're doing that by basically comparing, for the compressor, the intercooler inlet density versus the ambient air density. So how much air density is being added by the two compressors, or single or dual compressors, depending on what configuration they're running. And then for the intercooler, it's in between the manifold and the compressor outlet. So how much air density is being added by the intercooler. And then finally, the overall manifold air density, which is kind of the ultimate air density that's being inhaled by the engine as it pumps air. So we're compiling each of the contestants' runs, the data after each run. The ADASH has a little SD card, so we just pull out the SD card in between runs, put it in the laptop, and just process it real quick, and we have a spreadsheet that kind of compares everyone.
Well, that's awesome. Can I just take a wild guess here? Duramax in the lead?
On this sheet, I don't have, let me check. So right now, the highest is Seth Kuntz from, this is up to the sled pull contest, right?
Oh, with the 12 valve. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, sure.
So he's got a 600% manifold air density. So essentially he's got 600 times the standard day of air density. So that's 72.2. That's what everyone uses for like the dyno correction factors. It's kind of like the sea level average air density. So his manifold has 6 times that. So it's basically is it enhancing the oxygen content and the manifold 6 times over that typical sea level day.
Gotcha.
So that's quite a bit.
Awesome, man. Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking some time out to talk to our listeners and explain a little bit more about this. I know I'm definitely excited to see what the final results are here after the trailer cone course and the sled pull wrapping up Diesel Power Challenge 2019.
Cool. Thanks a lot.